Hey everyone, and welcome back for another deep dive with us. I'm so excited about today's topic because we're going to be looking at how much we can actually unpack from just one single piece of art.
Yeah, it's really amazing what a jumping off point art can be.
For sure. So we're going to be looking at a painting called Bull Kelp, and again, we're going to be analyzing it through three different lenses: artistic analysis,
Oh yeah.
Zen Buddhism,
All right.
and the East I Ching.
Wow, that's quite a combination.
I know, right?
Yeah.
Who knew seaweed and driftwood could be so deep?
Well, I have a feeling we're about to find out.
That's right. So let's start by just like setting the scene.
Yeah.
Imagine this painting, Bull Kelp by Bob Camblin. So you've got this huge tangled mass of bull kelp washed up on the shore, and then right next to it is this piece of smooth driftwood.
Hmm?
And then the ocean and sky are kind of in the background, and they sort of blend together in these soft blues and grays.
I like that.
Yeah. It's very tranquil, but also, I don't know, there's this like maybe a little desolate feeling to it.
Yeah. Yeah, I can see that. What I think is so interesting immediately is that contrast,
Ah.
You've got on the one hand all this intricate detail of the kelp. It's almost chaotic.
Right.
And then on the other hand, there's this smooth, almost stark simplicity of the driftwood.
Yeah.
It's like Camlin's playing with us, making us think about this duality, the complexity and simplicity that's just everywhere in nature and maybe within ourselves too.
It's true. And, the sources point out that Camlin was super into Zen philosophy. Like, he actually wanted to make paintings that were like visual koans.
Oh, wow.
Those riddles that Zen masters use to like provoke people and make them think. I think I'm already starting to see how Zen Buddhism fits in here.
Yeah, for sure.
Yep.
I mean, that contrast we were just talking about that really gets at the heart of Zen Buddhism, don't you think?
Totally.
You've got the kelp all tangled and knotted up, which is kind of like when our minds are clinging to thoughts and emotions.
Mm-hmm.
And then you've got the driftwood,
Yeah.
all weathered and worn, but still and present. I mean, it's like a perfect visual representation of that idea of non-attachment that's so important in Zen.
It is. It's like the kelp is fighting against the current, but the driftwood has just totally surrendered to it.
Yeah.
But, I have to say, the driftwood looks like it's been through a lot, you know? Like stripped, bare washed ashore.
For sure.
It makes me think about loss a little bit.
Mm.
So is that part of the Zen message, too?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. That sense of impermanence, that nothing lasts forever, I think that's really at the heart of Zen.
Okay.
It's about accepting that everything changes. Even something that seems as solid and permanent as a tree. Eventually it gets worn down, it changes.
Right. Yeah.
And I think it's that acceptance, that letting go, that leads to peace.
So it's not about achieving some blissful, detached state. It's about understanding the whole cycle, the struggle, the loss, the acceptance,
Yeah.
and then maybe finding beauty in that whole process.
Exactly. And that's actually a good transition to talking about the I Ching. Have you heard of it?
I have, but I'll admit I'm no expert.
Yeah. Well, it's this ancient Chinese text all about change,
Mm-hmm.
navigating life's ups and downs. And there's this one hexagram, Ken. It means the abysmal.
Okay.
It really connects with what we're talking about with this painting.
So for those of us who don't know much about the I Ching, what is this can hexagram all about?
Okay, well, imagine you're caught in a really strong current. If you try to fight against it, you're just going to get exhausted, right?
Right.
Can is about learning how to swim with the current, how to find the path of least resistance.
Okay.
It's about navigating danger, persevering through challenges, and ultimately coming out the other side transformed.
So when we think about bull kelp, is the tangled kelp, like all of those challenges we face in life, all those currents we have to navigate.
Exactly.
And the driftwood is that our ability to like weather those challenges, to find a kind of stillness even when everything is swirling around us.
Yes, it's resilience in its purest form.
I'm really seeing how this is all coming together. But the
Yeah.
driftwood's journey from like forest to shore, it makes me think of a specific kind of resilience, the kind that comes from being uprooted, forced to adapt to somewhere completely new.
Yeah, I see what you mean.
Is that something I Ching talks about?
It absolutely is. I mean, Khan is all about how real resilience isn't about staying fixed in one place.
Mhm.
It's about adapting to change, flowing with the currents of life.
Yeah.
And sometimes that means, going on a journey that you never expected, even if it seemed a little abysmal at first.
That's a powerful image.
Uh,
So we've got art, we've got Zen Buddhism, we've got the I Ching, and they're all saying similar things like
Aye.
accept change, find resilience, and maybe even find some kind of peace in the middle of it all.
Yeah.
But how do we actually apply that to our own lives? I mean, we're not pieces of driftwood,
Well,
right?
that's the million-dollar question, isn't it?
Yeah.
And I think that's exactly what we're going to unpack next.
Okay.
Because believe it or not, this painting with its seaweed and driftwood, it actually holds some pretty practical wisdom for navigating the complexities of our own lives.
I can't wait to hear more. So we've explored, the artistic side and the philosophical side of bulk help, but now I want to talk about how these concepts actually work in real life.
Yeah.
It's one thing to talk about resilience and accepting change, but what does that actually look like when we're just living our normal lives?
Well, I think the sources offer some pretty practical advice.
Hmm.
One of the big takeaways is this idea of finding harmony in the middle of chaos.
Yeah. I like that. The painting is kind of a visual representation of that, right?
Right.
Like you've got the tangled kelp, which is like all the challenges we have to deal with.
Yeah.
But it's all set against this really peaceful background of the ocean and the sky. It's like a reminder that even when things feel turbulent, there's this underlying sense of calm.
Exactly. And the sources talk about how important it is to cultivate that inner calm
Yeah.
if you want to weather the storms of life.
Yeah.
You know,
Right.
they talk about embracing change, practicing acceptance, and cultivating resilience. All of these are skills that we can work on to get better at handling whatever life throws at us.
I'm really curious about that idea of embracing change because change can be scary.
Oh, for sure.
Like
Yeah.
as humans, we tend to want to hold on to what's familiar even when it's not good for us anymore.
Yeah, that's so true.
So what does bulk help say about that?
Well, one way to think about it is to look at the driftwood.
Okay.
I mean, it's been uprooted, it's been stripped bare, it's been tossed around by the tides,
Yeah.
but it's also been shaped by that whole process. It's been polished. It's beautiful.
Right.
It's like a reminder that even when change is hard, even when it's painful, it can lead us to grow and transform.
So the driftwood's journey is kind of like our own personal journeys. We go through tough times, we get knocked around a bit, but hopefully we come out stronger and more resilient.
Exactly. And there's this really great line in one of the sources that says, water shapes the hardest rock through persistence. I love that. It reminds us that we can overcome even the hardest challenges if we're patient and resilient.
That really connects to the driftwood imagery, weathered but enduring.
Yeah.
But, one thing that stood out to me about the painting was the tangled kelp itself.
Wow.
The sources say it represents our tangled thoughts and emotions, and I have to admit, that feels really relatable these days.
Oh, totally.
There's just so much going on in the world. It's hard not to get caught up in all of it.
I hear that.
So how do we deal with that?
Well, I think that highlights another important lesson from the sources, and that is mindfulness.
Okay.
Cultivating mindfulness can help us to deal with uncertainty with compassion and presence. It's not about pretending the hard stuff isn't there. It's about facing it with a clear mind and an open heart.
So instead of getting all wrapped up in our worries and fears, we can learn to just observe them without judging them.
Yes.
And maybe that will help us to untangle ourselves a little bit.
Exactly. And that takes us back to the Zen idea of non-attachment.
Okay.
It doesn't mean we don't feel anything. It just means that we recognize that our thoughts and feelings are always changing. Just like the tides, they ebb and flow.
Right.
We can learn to ride those waves without getting completely swept away.
That makes a lot of sense. And it's
Yeah.
not about being passive. It's about engaging with life's challenges, but doing it in a mindful way
Yeah, definitely.
from a place of awareness and acceptance.
Right. And I think this is where the wisdom of the I Ching comes in.
Okay.
Remember, it's not about avoiding difficulty. It's about going with the flow,
Yeah.
finding the path of least resistance, trusting that even when everything feels chaotic, there's this natural order to things.
So it's not about controlling the chaos. It's about moving with it,
Yeah,
adapting and adjusting.
exactly. And just like any skill that takes practice,
Right.
the sources actually have some really interesting questions that can help us practice.
Like what?
Well, they ask, where are you entangled? And how can you begin to untangle or accept those complexities?
I love that. It's like picturing that tangled kelp
Yeah.
and asking yourself, where's my own personal kelp forest?
Yeah.
What's twisting me up inside? Yeah.
And then how can I approach those things with a little more mindfulness and acceptance?
I love it.
So good.
And they also ask, how do you flow with change? It's a reminder that we need to find ways to be flexible and resilient, just like the driftwood.
Okay.
Because change is going to happen whether we like it or not.
It's true.
But we get to choose how we respond to it.
And that's a good reminder that we might not be able to control what happens to us, but we can control how we react,
Yeah.
how we choose to go with the flow.
Totally. And the sources also ask us to think about what sustains us. Just like the ocean currents sustain the kelp and the driftwood.
Okay.
What are the things that support us and guide us even when things are tough?
Mm.
Or it could be our relationships or our values or even just our sense of purpose.
That's such a beautiful question, and it reminds us that we're not alone.
Right.
There are these sources of strength all around us.
Hmm.
Okay, so I think this leads us to the final question in the sources,
Okay.
which is, what can you let go of?
Ooh, it's
Yeah.
a big one. I know, right? Just like the kelp surrendering to the shoreline, what are some things we can let go of to
Mm-hmm.
feel more at peace?
That's really what it's all about, isn't it?
Olinger.
Letting go of the things that aren't serving us anymore so we can move more freely with the currents of life.
This whole deep dive has given us so much to think about.
I know, me too.
I'm looking at seaweed and driftwood in a totally new way.
I hear that.
But before we wrap up, I'm curious to hear your thoughts on this last question from the sources.
Oh yeah, the big question.
Okay, here it is. If the painting, Bulk Help, could actually speak, what advice would it give you about navigating your own life's tides?
Wow, that's a good one. It really makes you stop and think, huh?
I know.
And I think that's the whole point. It's not about finding the right answer. It's about wrestling with the question, letting
Yeah.
it sit with you.
Yeah, exactly. It's an invitation to keep exploring, to keep thinking about all of this, and to find our own personal meaning in it.
I like that.
And I think Bull Kelp, with all its simplicity and depth, it's the perfect inspiration for that journey.
It is. And hey, don't forget, you can always go back and look at the source material.
Yeah.
We'll put links to everything in the show notes so you can spend some time with the painting. You can reread the sources, let it all sink in.
Yes. And on that note, I think we're going to wrap up this deep dive. But the exploring doesn't have to stop here.
Yeah, there's always more to discover, more to learn.
So until next time, keep those minds curious and keep those perspectives open. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive. We'll see you next time for a totally new topic.
It's going to be great. I have to say, I'm looking at seaweed and driftwood completely differently now.
Me too.
It's amazing how something so ordinary can suddenly become so profound.
It's like we've been given a new way of seeing the world, right? Art philosophy, the I
Yeah.
Ching, they're all like lenses that can help us understand our own experiences.
Yeah, and bull kelp has really given us a lot to think about.
For sure.
I think one of the things that has stuck with me the most is that idea of finding harmony amidst the chaos.
Life can feel so crazy sometimes, but it's good to remember that there's always that sense of calm underneath it all.
Yeah, I think that's one of the most important things we can learn from this deep dive.
Yeah.
It's not about pretending that the chaos isn't there.
Right.
It's about knowing that we have the strength to deal with it. We can learn to be more resilient. We can learn to accept things. We can learn to embrace change.
Right.
These aren't just ideas. They're skills we can practice and get better at.
And you know what else I keep thinking about? That idea of the driftwood's journey,
Oh, yeah.
being uprooted and stripped bare and forced to adapt to something new. It's not always easy, but it can lead to something really beautiful and strong.
Absolutely. And I think that's a really encouraging message for anyone who's going through a tough time. It reminds us that even when we feel lost and uncertain, we can still grow and transform.
So instead of resisting change, maybe we can look at it as an opportunity, a chance to be shaped by the things that happen to us.
I love that.
To become like the driftwood in a way, weathered and worn, but still beautiful.
Beautiful and strong.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So what do you think? Any final thoughts before we wrap up?
Well, first of all, I just want to remind everyone that you can go back and look at the source material.
Oh, yeah. Good point.
We'll have links to everything in the show notes.
Yes.
So you can spend some time with the painting. You can reread those insightful passages. Just let those ideas really sink in.
Yes. And I think we should also remind everyone about that final question.
Oh, yeah, the big one.
What would bulk help whisper to you?
What would it whisper to you?
I think it's a question that could stay with us for a long time.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
And that's okay, you know? Sometimes it takes a while for these big ideas to really sink in.
It's like the waves on the shore.
Yeah, exactly. So on that note, I think we're going to wrap up this deep dive into bulk help.
But remember, the exploration doesn't end here.
That's right. There's always more to discover, more to learn, more to connect with.
So keep those minds curious and those perspectives open.
Yes, and thanks for joining us. We'll see you next time for a completely new topic. You won't want to miss it.